But you're wrong as far as nature not designing us to eat meat, because otherwise we wouldn't have the teeth that is required to rip and tear.
Oh yeah, we have teeth just like a Tyrannosaurus, just like a shark, you know, just like a lion. You know, our teeth are just like that. Now, why don't you go look at a gorilla, moron? I mean, I can't believe you made an argument this lame. I mean, you're so arrogant and pontificating, and yet you can be this ignorant. I mean, this is an ignorant argument. I mean, compared to most animals, we have very weak teeth. and you know, they have very little use, so it's just silly to even say it comes close to the teeth required to eat raw meat. It's nonsense.
That nature designed us and gave us. It's more than just a human choice. We have the teeth for it, so obviously we are designed for that.
Yeah, well then why aren't all these other animals that have teeth much more aggressive than ours designed for it? I mean, baboons are mostly vegetarian. They got the nastiest motherfucking teeth on earth.
We have to eat meat, but we have the capacity to move beyond it and not eat meat anymore. So,
well, we don't have the capacity. It's not even just the teeth problem. We don't have the teeth for eating raw meat. We don't have the fucking digestive system for raw meat. The whole reason why they introduced steak tartare in the United States of America was as a dietary aid, so fat people could lose weight, because you can't digest this shit, you dumb moron.
But who are you to say that plants and vegetation don't have sentient consciousness?
Who am I? No, it's not me. It's every biologist. Just I can't imagine there's 0.0001% of scientists on planet Earth now who believe a plant feels, you idiot. So it's not a, you don't got to ask who am I, ask who is every intellect that's ever, even for the last 500 years, I don't think there'd be anybody stupid enough to say plants feel.
Say that plants don't suffer. Just because plants don't have brains doesn't mean that they don't.
Yeah, just because they don't have the organ where our consciousness resides doesn't mean they don't have a consciousness. I mean, it's just silly talk. So if I trim my fingernail is sitting there saying, "Oh, goddamn, fuck," and it's having a whole fucking experience. Then if I just keep whittling my finger down, say if I cut my finger in about 500 little pieces, each one of those little pieces is conscious. I mean, come on, fucktard.
Have some form of consciousness and that they don't suffer. That's pretty equally disgusting of you to assume that.
It's not an assumption. It's a goddamn conclusion drawn based on about a zillion tons of factual data. Okay, there's just no way you can deny the connection between our consciousness and this complex brainy matter.
You can justify it in your own mind if it suits your needs, and you have no problem doing it. You have no problem eating plants.
Yeah, well, you might as well say the dead are alive. I mean, this kind of nonsense. So when you drop dead, you don't really drop dead. No, you're still conscious. You're still having a conscious experience. You're just not animated anymore. I mean, that is just so silly. It's so preposterous. It's just, like I said, what you've just... Not that you had any credibility, but you just erased any hope that you had some sort of argument to make.
Swatting horseflies. So if something lacks a brain, then it's okay for it to suffer. That's your justification.
Yes, if something lacks the capacity to feel, yeah, then yeah, suffering's out of the equation, fucktard.
As far as perfection goes, why can't we achieve a state where, you know, needs are met and no sentient life is hurt in that process? Why?
Well, if you're going to declare all these plants feeling organisms that can be harmed and every other, I don't know how far you go with that nonsense, well, then you have no hope of creating such a world. You're just talking about creating some kind of world where, what, human beings walk around in pink dresses with yellow balloons and, you know, kiss each other on the cheeks as they pass. I mean, what kind of bullshit are you talking about here? There's nothing in the reality of our nature or the nature we live in or any of this that makes that a realistic possibility. The whole point of desire is to gain its satisfaction, and to eradicate the desires, to eradicate all fucking point. If you're not even going to have the addiction, then there's really no point to the game.
Is that not doable in your book? You tell me good luck with that, and you ask me how are we going to do that, just because, you know, the past 10,000 years, man, has been barbaric, but that's no justification not to try.
It's just who's against trying? I'm not against trying. I'm just pointing out a philosophical truth that even if we achieve the zero sum, even if we get to perfection, we're still riding a ride that doesn't need to be ridden, and the only need is through something we contrive. It's a contrived purpose. It's not a real purpose.
You know, just because man went through a period and is still in that period of eating meat, that also doesn't have to stay that way either. The same goes for plants. Maybe we can reach a point where man won't have to destroy plants either to feed himself.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it's all in the blood, you know. So eventually we can just feed our blood basic chemistry, because that's really the game. But so what? What does that have to do with the fucking point or the purpose in us wandering about anyway, and to do it over and 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 over again?
You got to work with what you have at the moment, and then you build, and then you change. You know, the reason that you put more rats into the maze is so that those rats might see a day when life becomes better. That in itself is a reason to keep on keeping on.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, it isn't. You know, throwing more rats in the game so they can make just a half of an elephant man, and then even more rats, and maybe they'll get to a quarter of an elephant man. I mean, it's still shit and horror and blood and guts for nothing. There's no gain to be gained. There's just the illusion of you satisfying your addiction.
The fact that life could become something greater than what it is right now. And life is not a stupid game because there is nothing else left to do, Harry. What's the alternative besides a void? So I really don't...
Yeah, well, what's the negative of a void? What's the negative of a zero? There's no negative potential there. So you really can't argue. You've got to argue for something positive. You can't argue that we got to do it because somehow we're going to avoid the void. That void that's not a negative. That doesn't make any sense. You have to figure out how void is a negative before you can make the argument. You've got to point out how you're a relative positive, and you're not coming close to that argument.
See the point I keep on debating, because it really boils down to this. You are a man who finds reasons why not, and I am a man.
Yeah, you're an idiot. That's the problem. I don't know whether you're a man. You know, you're an idiot.
That finds reasons why, and we're never going to see eye to eye. And it's an argument that can't be solved.
Yeah, well, it can be solved. We'll just keep demonstrating that you are logically stupid, flawed, broken, that you're dysfunctional. Your intellect is dysfunctional. It's full of non-factual, non-real information. Plants don't feel, all right, and our teeth are not brilliant flesh rippers.
You say that it's a pointless game because suffering happens, and I say it's a game worth playing because there's no alternative, and suffering is part of it.
Yeah, well, there's no alternative. So if everybody else is running off the cliff, you should run off the cliff, because there's no alternative. Because if you don't do what everybody else is doing, there's nothing to do. It just doesn't know. Nature has created a mess, and you're just going to sit there and justify the mess because it's the only thing you know. All right, the only thing I understand is the mess, so we must have more mess. But it's completely dependent on your attachment to some notion of messiness, because you can't see it any other way. You see everything that's not a mess as some kind of negative because it doesn't have mess.
The sacrifice that is paid to get to a greater place. That's basically it.
Yeah, well, you didn't describe the greater place either, so that's not going to work either. You can't just promise a greater place without giving some sort of rational explanation of what the greater place would be made out of. We know what desire is. We know what satisfaction is. We know that game. And that's the only game this life thing can do. That's the only thing consciousness can do. I mean, once it's satisfied that desire thing, it's not going to have a mission anymore, because an intelligence without a mission is nothing. It doesn't, it's not going to function. So that's just fail. It's not an argument for why it's not a justification for the suffering. Again, you haven't explained it away, you haven't compensated for it, you haven't provided an argument that justifies it. All you've said is yes, we're addicted, let's keep playing a stupid game. And that's just bullshit. Unreasonable bullshit. Keep talking a little bit because I gotta hit the button. Yeah, alright, 2 parts, not too bad. It's better than 3 parts. Theoretically.